Once upon a time, in a small, thriving village in the eastern part of Nigeria, surrounded by lush green hills and flowing streams, there lived a couple known for their extraordinary beauty. Their names were Edward and Olivia. Edward was a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark, glistening skin, sharp eyes, and a deep voice that commanded respect. Olivia, on the other hand, was the kind of woman whose beauty turned heads. Wherever she went, her smooth skin glowed under the sun, and her long, full hair framed a face so delicate, yet striking that men often stole glances at her even after she was married. In their village, tradition dictated that once a girl was born, young men would quickly pay her bride price, securing her as a future wife before she even learned to walk. It was a custom that had been followed for generations. Once the girl matured, her husband would come to take her to his house, ready to fulfill the agreement made years ago. So when Olivia became pregnant with their first child, the entire village buzzed with excitement. If a child was going to be born from such a beautiful couple, then she, because everyone prayed it would be a girl, would be breathtaking. The young men waited in anticipation, sharpening their plans, ready to stake their claims as soon as the baby arrived. But Edward and Olivia had a different mindset. They were not about to hand over their daughter to just any man. They believed their child was destined for greater things. They didn't want a poor man to marry her. No, their daughter would be given to a wealthy man, someone who could give her a life of luxury and protect her from the struggles of ordinary villagers. So, when suitors started approaching even before Olivia had given birth, they dismissed them one after another. They didn't give anyone false hope. Months passed, and on a bright morning, filled with the sounds of singing birds and chattering women at the stream, Olivia went into labor. The cries of pain filled their small hut, and the village midwives rushed in, their hands steady with years of experience. After hours of pushing and panting, the wail of a newborn filled the air. A girl, the midwife announced joyfully, lifting the baby for Olivia to see. And just as everyone had suspected, she was stunning. Her skin was soft like freshly woven cotton, her eyes large and curious even as a newborn, and her little fingers curled around her mother's thumb, as if she already understood the power she held. The news spread like wildfire. That same evening, women from every corner of the village came bearing gifts, their faces filled with admiration. "She will marry my son," one woman declared, clapping her hands excitedly. "Ah, my dear, my own son has been waiting for this day," another countered. Olivia only laughed, shaking her head. "No, my daughter is not for just any man," she would say playfully. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia's home became a place of constant visits. Men came with gifts, hoping to secure the child's future, but Edward and Olivia remained unmoved. Then, one afternoon, as Olivia bathed her daughter under the mango tree, something unexpected happened. A sleek, black machine that shone under the sun drove into their compound, its tires kicking up small clouds of dust. The villagers were not used to seeing cars often, and this one was a clear sign of wealth. The car came to a smooth stop, and from it emerged a young man in his mid-20s. He was tall, handsome, and well-dressed, his white shirt crisp and spotless, his shoes polished to perfection. He walked toward Olivia with the confidence of someone who knew his worth. "Good afternoon, Ma," he greeted with a respectful nod. Olivia, still holding her baby, frowned slightly. "Good afternoon, my son. Who are you?" The young man smiled, then turned to open the trunk of his car. To Olivia's shock, he brought out bags of rice, cartons of milk, bundles of fine baby clothes, and even a small wrapped package that smelled of expensive perfume. He placed them gently in front of her before facing her once more. "My name is Leonard," he said. "I came home for Christmas, and I heard that you have given birth to the most beautiful girl in this village. I want to marry her." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Unlike the others, this one was different. He was young, wealthy, and polite. "I will wait for her until she grows up," Leonard continued. "I will sponsor her education from the beginning to the end. I will give her everything she needs. I will protect her." Olivia was speechless. She looked at the expensive gifts before turning back to the man standing in front of her. "My husband is not at home. she finally managed to say. "When he comes back, I will tell him what you have said." Leonard nodded with understanding, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "Please take this," he said, handing it to her. "It's just a token." Olivia hesitated before accepting it. It was heavier than she expected. As Leonard got back into his car and drove away, Olivia stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. That evening, when Edward returned, Olivia told him everything. She showed him the gifts, the envelope full of money, and described the young man in great detail. Edward's eyes gleamed with approval. "A man with money and good looks?" He chuckled. "That is the kind of man I want for my daughter. Let him marry her." The next day, Leonard returned, this time with even more gifts and an envelope that was even heavier than the last. He officially asked for the child's hand in marriage, and Edward, smiling broadly, gave his blessing. "You have my permission," he said. "You can marry my daughter." Within a few days, Leonard came back with his family to perform the traditional marriage rites. The entire village gathered to witness what became the most talked about ceremony in years. The amount of food Leonard's family brought was more than anyone had ever seen. Bags of rice, goats, yams, gallons of palm oil. No one had ever been given such a bride price before. When the ceremony was complete, Olivia carefully placed the baby in Leonard's arms. He stared down at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "She is mine now," he said proudly. Then, as a sign of goodwill, he gave the baby a wad of crisp Naira notes before handing her back to Olivia. Days later, Leonard returned to the city, promising to come back for his wife when the time was right. And just like that, a newborn child was betrothed to a man she had yet to know. When Leonard returned to the city, he didn't forget about his young wife. Every week, without fail, he sent money to Olivia and Edward for her upkeep. It was not just ordinary money, it was more than enough to buy the best clothes, the freshest food, and anything else she needed. Leonard had made a promise to take care of her, and he kept it. As the years passed, the little girl blossomed into the most beautiful maiden in the village. Her beauty was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Her skin was smooth like the inside of an almond shell, her features delicate yet striking, her body growing into the graceful shape of a well-fed, well-tended young woman. Her parents, knowing she was destined for a life far greater than the village could offer, ensured she was different from the rest. Unlike other children who ran barefoot on dusty paths and played in the rain, she was carefully shielded from anything that would make her seem ordinary. Olivia was strict about where she went and who she spoke to. "You do not belong here," her mother would often remind her, adjusting the fine gold earrings Leonard had sent for her. "Your life is different. You will marry a great man." And indeed, she was different. While other girls wore simple, locally sewn dresses, she adorned herself in fine clothes sent from the city. While other children sat on mats to eat, she dined from ceramic plates, drinking fresh milk instead of the common kunu. The villagers noticed a difference. Some admired her, others whispered in jealousy. But there was one thing her parents never told her, the truth about Leonard. To her, he was simply Uncle Leonard, the kind man who always sent her gifts, who called her on the phone to ask about her studies, who laughed whenever she greeted him with a respectful, soft voice. Each time he called, her parents would smile in approval and hand her the phone. "Talk to your uncle," they would say. And she did. "Good afternoon, Uncle," she would say shyly. "My beautiful wife." Leonard would respond warmly, his deep voice full of joy. "How are you today?" "I am fine, sir," she would reply, her voice barely above a whisper. Leonard would always chuckle at her shyness. "You're growing well, my dear. I am proud of you." She never questioned why he was so invested in her life. She never asked why he sent her gifts, when other uncles never did the same for their nieces. To her, he was simply a generous relative, a man her parents loved and respected. As time passed, her beauty became a problem. Whenever she walked through the village, eyes followed her. Men young and old stared at her with admiration, whispering among themselves. Even married women, who often pretended not to care, would steal glances, unable to ignore her rare beauty. "That girl is not ordinary," they would murmur. Some man, bold enough to try, approached Olivia and Edward, hoping to ask for her hand in marriage. Each time, they were met with laughter. "Our daughter is not for you. She's taken," Edward would say with finality. Even the girl herself became shy of going out. She preferred staying at home, away from the prying eyes that made her uncomfortable. She didn't understand why people stared so much, why they whispered when she passed. Her parents never told her that her future had already been decided. While she grew up under their care, Leonard was making plans. By the time she finished secondary school, he had already mapped out her future. He opened a thriving provision store for her parents, ensuring they lacked nothing. To Olivia and Edward, this was proof that their daughter was truly a blessing. Because of her, wealth had entered their home. At 17, she graduated from secondary school with excellent results. Her parents beamed with pride, knowing her future was even brighter now. But while she was celebrating, Leonard, now in his 40s, was already taking the next step. He bought her a jam form. She must attend the best university in the country. He told Edward over the phone, "I will sponsor everything. She will not suffer like others." And he did exactly that. She wrote the exam, passed with flying colors, and Leonard, true to his word, enrolled her in the most expensive university in Nigeria. The day she left for school, the entire village gathered to see her off. They watched as she entered the sleek black car Leonard had sent, her luggage packed neatly in the boot. Women clapped their hands in amazement, whispering among themselves, "She is lucky," one woman said. "Who would have thought that a village girl would be given such a life?" Another added. Olivia stood beside Edward, a proud smile on her face. "I told you," she said to her husband, "she is not meant for this village." As the car drove away, the young girl looked back at the only home she had ever known. She had no idea that she was heading into a future that had been written for her, long before she could even speak, a future that she was yet to understand. Bella had always known a quiet life. Growing up in her small village, she had been shielded from the struggles of the real world. Her parents had raised her with care, treating her like the rare gem she was. Leonard had provided everything she needed, and she had never lacked. But as she stepped into the university, she realized that her life was just beginning. The moment Leonard's driver pulled up in front of her hostel, a grand, three-story building with polished floors and well-furnished rooms, Bella knew she was in a different world. The hostel was the most expensive one on campus, reserved for the children of the rich and influential. As the driver got down to open the car door for her, a few students standing nearby turned to stare. Bella's beauty was impossible to ignore. Her flawless skin, delicate features, and regal composure made her stand out. The driver, a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed beard, handed her a sleek black box. "This is from Chief Leonard," he said with a smile, using the title that everyone in the village called him. Curious, Bella opened the box and gasped. Inside was the latest smartphone, sleek and expensive. Beneath it was a small envelope, and when she opened it, an ATM card fell into her palm. "The card is already loaded," the driver continued. "Oga said you should use it as you like. He doesn't want you to lack anything." Bella felt a rush of gratitude. She had never seen Leonard in person, but he had been a constant presence in her life. She quickly removed her SIM card from her old phone and inserted it into the new one. Then, after settling into her well-furnished room, she called her mother. "Mama, guess what? Uncle Leonard bought me a new phone and an ATM card. He said I should use the money inside for my upkeep." Her mother's joyful laughter rang through the phone. My daughter. You see why I always tell you that God has blessed you. Leonard is a good man. Don't joke with your studies and make him proud." After the call ended, Bella dialed Leonard's number. His deep, warm voice came through almost immediately. "Hello, my Bella. Uncle Leonard. Thank you so much. I love the phone, it's beautiful. And the ATM card. I don't even know what to say. You're too kind." Leonard chuckled. "Anything for you, my dear. You deserve it. Just focus on your studies. Don't worry about money. Whatever you need, let me know. I will make sure you don't lack." Bella nodded excitedly, even though he couldn't see her. "I promise to make you proud." "That's my girl," Leonard said. "Once you graduate, you'll come and stay with me in the city." Bella's heart swelled with happiness. She had heard so much about the city, the tall buildings, the busy streets, the endless opportunities. She had always longed to see it for herself. Life in the university was nothing like what Bella had imagined. The campus was large and lively, filled with students from different backgrounds. For the first time, she saw the difference between those who had struggled to get there and those who, like her, had everything handed to them. Because Leonard provided her with everything: money, food, clothes. She never had to struggle like other students. She didn't have to wait in long queues at the cafeteria or worry about transport fare. Leonard's driver would come every weekend, delivering foodstuff, fresh vegetables, and other supplies from the best stores. He would also take her shopping in high-end boutiques, making sure she had the latest designer bags and shoes. Unlike other girls who followed men around for money, Bella had no reason to. She had everything she needed. Despite her beauty and expensive lifestyle, she remained humble. She focused on her studies and avoided unnecessary attention. But that didn't stop the male students from noticing her. Whenever she walked across campus, heads turned. Boys would stop mid-conversation just to watch her pass. Some would rush to talk to her, their voices eager, their words laced with admiration. "Hello, beautiful. Can I know your name? Wow. I've never seen such a pretty girl on campus before. Are you new here? Excuse me, please. Can I have your number?" Bella always turned them down politely. "Thank you, but I'm not interested." Some took the rejection well, while others insisted, thinking she was playing hard to get. But Bella never entertained them. Every night, she would call Leonard and tell him about her day, how many boys had approached her, how she was coping with lectures, what she had eaten. These calls made Leonard happy. He would listen with a satisfied smile on his face, picturing his beautiful young wife growing into a responsible woman. "You're doing well, my Bella," he would say. "Stay away from boys. Focus on your studies. You have everything you need." "I know, Uncle Leonard," she would reply sweetly. "I'm always careful." As the years passed, Bella continued to make Leonard proud. She was one of the top students in her class. She never failed to call her parents, updating them on her progress. But she never questioned why Leonard was doing all this for her. To her, he was just a kind uncle who had taken care of her since she was born. By the time Bella was in her final year, Leonard had become her backbone. He had invested too much in her, and the bond between them had grown deeper. On the day of her graduation, Bella was excited. She had invited her parents, but nothing could have prepared her for the surprise waiting for her. As she stepped out of the auditorium, her eyes landed on a tall, handsome man standing beside a sleek black SUV. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored kaftan, his presence commanding. Bella frowned slightly. There was something familiar about him. Then, as he took a step closer, realization hit her like a wave. "Uncle Leonard?" she gasped. Leonard smiled. "Yes, my Bella. I had to come." Before she could think, she ran into his arms, hugging him tightly. It was the first time they had met in person, but it felt as if they had known each other forever. Leonard chuckled, holding her close. "You've grown into a fine woman. I'm so proud of you, my wife." The words startled Bella, but she laughed, thinking it was one of his jokes. "Uncle Leonard, you're so dramatic." He smiled, his eyes lingering on her. "You're more beautiful in person. I always knew you would be." Throughout the celebration, Leonard stayed by her side, showering her with expensive gifts: a gold wristwatch, a designer handbag, a diamond necklace. When he held her hand, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time, she looked at him differently. He wasn't just a kind uncle who had taken care of her. He was a man handsome, rich, and powerful. As they took pictures together, he leaned in and whispered, "Now that you've graduated, it's time for you to come home." Bella smiled shyly. For the first time, she wondered, what did Leonard really mean by home? After Bella's graduation, her family celebrated her success with joy and pride. She was finally home, the girl who had made it against all odds. With a degree and a bright future ahead, the village rejoiced in her accomplishments. For them, she was not just any girl, she was proof that greatness could come from humble beginnings. Her mother, however, knew that Bella's journey had only just begun. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the village, her mother called her to the sitting room. The air felt different, heavier somehow. Bella sat on the couch, a smile still on her face from the day's festivities. Her mother, standing by the door, looked at her daughter with a mixture of love and concern. "Bella," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "there is something we need to talk about. It's time for you to go to the city and take your rightful place. And there's something else I need to tell you." Bella looked at her mother, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What is it, Mama?" Her mother sat down beside her and held her hands tightly. "Leonard isn't your uncle, my child," she said softly. "He is your husband." Bella's heart skipped a beat. The words didn't make sense to her. "Leonard? Her husband?" "Mama," Bella gasped. "Leonard is over 25 years older than me. How could you say he's my husband?" Her mother's eyes softened with understanding, but her tone was unwavering. "I'm not asking you to marry him again, my dear. He has already paid your bride price, long before you even knew what marriage was. It was done when you were just a baby. Leonard has been providing for you, not as an uncle, but as your husband." Bella's mind raced. She had always known Leonard as a figure of support, someone who had been there for her since birth, always providing, always caring. But a husband? The man who had sent her gifts, paid for her education, and treated her like a princess. Was that the man who had been with her in such a different way all along? Her mother continued, "You've grown up well, Bella. Leonard loves you. And now, it's time for you to go to him. You are his wife, and you must fulfill your duties as such." The words felt like they were suffocating Bella, drowning her in a sea of confusion. She had never once thought of Leonard in that way. Yes, she admired him. He was handsome, kind, and generous. But love, she didn't know if she could love him in the way a wife should love her husband. Before she could speak, her phone rang. It was Leonard. She answered it, her hands trembling slightly. "Bella," Leonard's voice came through, rich with warmth and pride. "I'm so proud of you, my lady. You've made me so happy. And I've sent you 2 million naira. It's for your upkeep. Just know that I'll always be here for you, always supporting you." Bella, still in a daze, barely managed to respond. "Leonard, I don't know what to say." He chuckled softly, his voice soothing. "You don't need to say anything, Bella. Just know that I am happy. Just know that I am here for you always. Now, go to your mother and get ready. I'll be waiting for you." When the call ended, Bella sat there, her heart heavy with emotions. She couldn't believe it. All her life, Leonard had been there, offering everything for her. Yet now, she was being asked to fulfill a role she hadn't prepared for. Could she truly love him? The man who had been both a father figure and a husband to her, even if she hadn't known it. She looked at her mother, who smiled gently, as if understanding her daughter's inner turmoil. "Don't worry, Bella. Go to him. He's a good man. He will treat you well." "I don't know, Mama," Bella whispered, her voice shaky. "How can I just accept this? How can I love him when I didn't even know I was his wife?" Her mother took her hands once more. "You don't have to love him immediately, but with time, you will understand. He has done everything for you, Bella, and you owe it to him. You owe it to the man who made you his." Bella closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of everything. She had always wanted to make Leonard proud, but this was something else. She had never envisioned her life like this. Could she ever fall in love with a man so much older than her? A man she had never considered more than a benefactor. The next few days passed in a blur. Leonard's driver arrived to take Bella to the city, where she would begin her new life. Bella tried to suppress her feelings, not wanting to disappoint her mother or Leonard, who had been so supportive of her. As they drove to the city, Leonard's presence loomed large. Even though he wasn't physically with her, his words echoed in her mind. I've waited for this moment all my life. His hands, the way he held her so tenderly, the way he looked at her with longing and affection, it all made her heart flutter, even though she was still confused. When they arrived at his mansion, Bella was stunned. She had never seen such a place before. It was grand, luxurious, with everything a person could ever need. Leonard wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful, influential. He had created this life for her, for them. This is where you'll stay now, Bella, Leonard said, his voice tender and deep as he gently held her hands. I will take care of you. You don't need to worry about anything. Bella's mind was racing as she looked around. Is this where you live, Leonard? She asked in awe. Yes, he said, pulling her closer. And now, this is your home too. She called her mother immediately to let her know she had arrived safely. Her mother's voice, filled with hope and encouragement, reminded her, be a good wife. Bella, you have everything now. Just be good to him. Despite the wealth and luxury surrounding her, Bella's heart was still uncertain. She had everything she could ever want: clothes, jewelry, even her own room in Leonard's mansion. But something was missing. Affection, care, and attention. Everything she wanted, he gave her. And yet, despite it all, Bella couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness inside her. The first night they shared together, Leonard was gentle, understanding that she was still adjusting. He made sure she felt comfortable, cared for. But Bella, despite everything, still couldn't feel what she thought she should. She lay there, in his arms, her thoughts far away, wondering if she would ever be able to love him as he loved her. In the quiet of the night, she whispered to herself, maybe in time, I will learn to love him. But deep down, Bella knew that this journey would not be an easy one. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with emotions she couldn't yet understand. But for now, she would take it one day at a time, hoping that eventually she would find her place in this strange, new world Leonard had created for her. A part of her still struggled to accept that she was married to him, even if she didn't feel ready for it. Leonard, ever attentive, made sure she had everything she needed. He treated her like a delicate flower, showering her with. Months passed, and despite Leonard's unwavering patience, Bella's heart remained distant. She couldn't understand why she couldn't love him the way he loved her. Leonard wasn't a bad man. He provided for her, pampered her with gifts, and treated her with kindness. He was patient, so patient that it broke Bella's heart even more. She knew what he wanted, but her feelings couldn't keep up. As they lay in bed one evening, Leonard's hand traveled down her body, caressing her skin, trying to feel a connection she couldn't give. His touch was gentle, but Bella felt a cold emptiness in her chest. Why can't I love him? She whispered to herself, tears stinging her eyes. He loved her. She knew that, but was that enough? Bella, you are my lawfully wedded wife, Leonard said softly, his voice low and intimate. As his hand moved to her belly, I long to have you in my arms, all my life. Bella froze. Why are you touching me like this? She asked, her voice trembling with confusion. He paused, his face unreadable. Because I love you. Bella, I don't know if you love me yet, but I am waiting for you to love me back. I will give you time. She closed her eyes, the weight of his words pressing down on her heart. I don't know if I can love you the way you want me to. Leonard, she whispered, I don't know how. You will, he said softly, kissing her forehead. You will, in time. The next day, Leonard went to work, leaving Bella to her thoughts. She found herself alone in their luxurious home, lost in the vast emptiness of her own heart. What was she supposed to do? Bored and restless, Bella decided to take a walk outside. The city was different, bigger, faster, and more alive than the village she had come from. As she walked, she could feel eyes on her. The way people stared made her uncomfortable. She didn't belong here, or did she? Trying to shake off the feeling, she walked faster, her thoughts distracted by the attention she was getting. Suddenly, A voice called out, "Hey, are you all right?" Startled, Bella turned to find a young man standing there. He was tall, with dark hair and a friendly smile. "I'm Michael," he said, extending his hand. "I just saw you walking and wanted to say hello. You look out of place here. New to the city?" Bella hesitated but then smiled. "Yes, I am." They chatted for a while, and before she knew it, they were exchanging phone numbers. Michael was younger than Leonard, and there was something about him that made Bella feel at ease. For the first time in a while, she felt like herself again. As she returned home that evening, Leonard noticed a change in her. She was more lively, her eyes brighter than they had been in days. I see you're enjoying yourself here," Leonard said with a smile, his voice warm as he watched her. Bella smiled back, but there was a distance in her eyes that he couldn't quite place. She was polite, but she wasn't really there. Her thoughts were elsewhere with Michael. Leonard didn't mind. He loved her deeply, and as long as she was happy, that was enough for him. But Bella wasn't as content as she appeared. Every day, she felt herself drifting further away from Leonard, even as he continued to dote on her. She never said it aloud, but the emotional gap between them was widening. A few days later, Bella couldn't resist the urge to visit Michael. She called him, and they arranged to meet at his place. When she arrived, Michael greeted her warmly and invited her inside. They talked about everything and nothing, laughing as they shared stories. Michael handed her a glass of wine. She hesitated but then took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through her body. One drink turned into two, and soon Bella was feeling lightheaded. Everything seemed to blur, and the next thing she knew, she was lying down on the couch, the room spinning around her. Hours passed before she woke up, disoriented and confused. The room was dark, and the only sound she could hear was her own breathing. She sat up quickly, realizing she wasn't wearing any clothes. Panic surged through her chest as she looked around for her things. Where was her dress? What had happened? Suddenly, Michael walked into the room, his face showing concern. "What have you done to me?" Bella's voice trembled with fear and anger. "Where are my clothes?" Michael tried to explain, but Bella couldn't listen. All she knew was that she had trusted him, and now she felt betrayed. She quickly dressed and stormed out of the house, her mind racing. What had just happened? She couldn't wrap her head around it. How could she have been so careless? As she walked back home, fear gnawed at her insides. Leonard would be home soon, and she didn't want him to find out. She couldn't bear to tell him what had happened. When she finally arrived home, she rushed to make dinner and shower, trying to calm herself down. As she sat down to wait for Leonard's return, her mind was consumed with thoughts of what had transpired with Michael. Should she tell Leonard? Should she keep it to herself? The door opened, and Leonard walked in, his arms wide as he greeted her. "I'm home, Bella." She couldn't help herself. She ran into his arms, desperate for comfort. Leonard was surprised by her reaction. She had never been this affectionate before. "Are you okay?" Leonard asked, his voice full of concern as he hugged her tightly. Bella hesitated before answering. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm fine." Leonard kissed her on the forehead and carried her to their bedroom. As they sat down to dinner later, Bella's phone buzzed incessantly with messages, but she ignored it, feeling a sense of dread building inside her. The next month, Bella's period was late. Panic struck her heart as she realized what that could mean. She hurried to Leonard, telling him that she needed to go to the hospital for a pregnancy test. He immediately drove her there, and the test confirmed that she was pregnant. Leonard embraced her, his joy uncontainable. "You've brought joy into my life, Bella," he exclaimed, kissing her gently. But Bella wasn't happy. Her heart was heavy, the weight of the uncertainty gnawing at her. She didn't know if the father of her child was Leonard or Michael, and now she was trapped in a situation she didn't know how to escape from. Who was the father of her child? The question lingered in her mind, unanswered, as the world seemed to close in around her. Bella sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the test result in her hands. Pregnant. The word felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled, and a storm of emotions raged within her. She should be happy. Leonard was overjoyed, hugging her tightly, whispering, "Thank you for bringing joy into my life." But Bella couldn't smile. She couldn't even look him in the eye, because deep down, a terrible question haunted her. Who is the father of my child? Days passed, but the weight of the truth crushed Bella's soul. She found herself staring at the ceiling at night, unable to sleep. The moment at Michael's house played in her mind like a broken record. She had been so careful all her life, yet one mistake had left her trapped in a nightmare. She wanted to tell Leonard the truth, but fear gripped her. What if the baby wasn't his? What if he threw her out? After everything he had done for her, how could she betray him like this? Bella felt like a prisoner in her own body. Every time Leonard placed a hand on her stomach, joy dancing in his eyes, guilt stabbed at her heart. She forced smiles, but inside, she was drowning. Leonard was the happiest man alive. He showered Bella with love, bringing home fresh fruits, buying baby clothes, and telling her about the future he imagined for their child. "I want a boy," he said one evening, rubbing her belly. "But even if it's a girl, I'll love her just the same." Bella nodded, pretending to enjoy the moment. But her mind was elsewhere. One day, Leonard noticed her mood. "Bella, you've been distant. Are you not happy about the baby?" She forced a smile. "I am. I'm just scared. It's a big responsibility." Leonard laughed softly. "Don't be scared. I'll always be here for you." His words should have comforted her, but they only made things worse. One night, as Bella lay in bed, she heard her phone vibrate. She picked it up. A message from Michael. "We need to talk." Her heart stopped. She quickly deleted the message and turned off her phone. The next morning, Leonard left early for work. As soon as he was gone, Bella sat on the couch, her hands shaking. She had to do something. She had to find out the truth. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hello, doctor? I need a DNA test." Bella took a deep breath, her mind racing. If the test revealed that Leonard wasn't the father, her whole life would crumble. Would he still love her? Would he still want the baby? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "God, please, let this baby be Leonard's." She didn't know what the result would be, but one thing was certain: her life was about to change forever. Bella sat on the couch, her hands trembling. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it in her ears. She had made up her mind she was going to tell Leonard the truth. She took a deep breath and turned to him. "Leonard, there's something I need to tell you." Leonard looked up from his phone and smiled. "What is it, my love?" Just as she opened her mouth, her phone buzzed. Her heart dropped. She glanced at the screen. A message from Michael. "We need to talk." Panic gripped her. She quickly deleted the message, forcing herself to stay calm. Leonard frowned. "What's wrong?" Bella hesitated, then forced a smile. I wanted to ask you something." Leonard nodded, waiting. "What name do you want to give our child?" she asked, her voice shaking. Leonard's face lit up. He pulled her into a hug. "Bella, you have no idea how happy you've made me. I've been thinking of names for weeks. If it's a boy, I'll name him Nathaniel. If it's a girl, she'll be Olivia." Bella smiled, but inside, her heart was breaking. She should have told him. She should have confessed. But fear held her back. Days passed, and Bella started seeing things differently. Leonard truly loved her. He had never mistreated her. He was patient, kind, and devoted to her. She no longer felt disgusted when he touched her. She no longer pushed him away. Instead, she regretted everything: the lies, the secrets, the mistake she made with Michael. If only she could turn back time. But in her culture, a married woman was never supposed to lie in another man's bed. Her mother had warned her, "If you cheat on your husband, it will bring a curse. You may lose your life or your husband's." Bella shivered at the thought. And now, the question haunted her day and night. What if the child is Michael's? Would she lose the only man who had been there for her since she was born? Bella couldn't live like this anymore. She had to do something. She had made a mistake, but she couldn't let it destroy her. Tears filled her eyes as she placed a hand on her stomach. "God, please, let this baby be Leonard's." She took a deep breath. It was time to face the truth. Bella's hands trembled as she sat in the hospital waiting room. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. The DNA test results were ready. She swallowed hard, staring at the sealed envelope in her hands. What if the child isn't Leonard's? She squeezed her eyes shut and whispered a prayer. "God, please, please let this child be my husband's." With shaking fingers, she tore the envelope open and unfolded the paper inside. Her eyes scanned the document. And then, the test confirms that Leonard is the biological father of the child. Her heart leaped. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She gasped for air, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Thank you, Jesus," she whispered. Relief flooded her body. Leonard was the father. She let out a deep, shaky breath, pressing a hand to her belly. The joy in her heart was overwhelming. But just as she was about to relax, another wave of fear crashed into her. Her mother's warning echoed in her mind. "If you ever lay on another man's bed, you will be cursed. You might lose your life, or your husband's." Her stomach twisted. She had spent the night in Michael's bed. Even though nothing happened, the tradition didn't care. Was she still in danger? As she sat in deep thought, her phone suddenly buzzed. She jumped. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. With hesitation, she picked up the call. "Hello?" she said cautiously. A deep voice came through the line. "Bella, please don't hang up." Her breath caught in her throat. It was Michael. Her grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. Michael sighed. "I just want to apologize for everything." Bella remained silent, her heartbeat quickening. "I shouldn't have taken you to my bedroom that night," Michael continued. "I shouldn't have undressed you. I was drunk. But that's no excuse. The truth is, I was attracted to you, and I wanted to see what you looked like naked." Bella's stomach churned in disgust. "But I swear on my life," he added quickly, "I didn't touch you, Bella. I never slept with you. I promise." Bella's mouth went dry. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Yes," Michael said firmly. "I know I messed up, but I would never do that to you. Please, believe me." Bella exhaled deeply, her mind racing. If Michael was telling the truth, then she had been living in fear for nothing. She closed her eyes, then spoke softly. "I forgive you, Michael, but please, don't ever call me again." She ended the call and dropped the phone on the table. Her hands were still shaking. She had almost confessed to something that never even happened. She let out a dry laugh, shaking her head. What a foolish mistake that would have been. That evening, Bella was a different person. She hummed as she cooked dinner. For the first time in months, she felt peace in her heart. By the time Leonard returned home, the dining table was set. A delicious aroma filled the house. Leonard raised a brow, surprised. "You cooked?" Bella smiled. "Yes, I did." Leonard sat down and took a bite. His eyes widened. "Wow, what's the occasion?" Bella sat across from him, watching him eat. She took a deep breath. It was time. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. Leonard looked up, chewing slowly. "Okay, I'm listening." Bella clenched her hands together. "Months ago, I visited a friend," she started. "He gave me a drink, and I didn't know he had added something to it." Leonard's fork froze in the air. Bella swallowed. "I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in his bed, naked." Leonard's jaw tightened. He wanted to apologize, but I pushed him away. "I ran home, and I wanted to tell you, but I was scared." Leonard's eyes darkened, his expression unreadable. Bella continued, her voice barely above a whisper. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I didn't know if the baby was yours. Leonard's hands curled into fists. Bella, but I didn't give up, she quickly added. I did a DNA test today. And Leonard, the baby is yours. Leonard's body relaxed slightly. His eyes searched hers. But that's not all, Bella said. When I got home, that friend called me and told me he didn't touch me. She took out her phone and played the recording. Leonard listened in silence. When the recording ended, Bella looked at him with teary eyes. I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. I just wanted to apologize. I thought you were too old for me, but I was wrong. You are my soulmate. Leonard remained silent for a long moment. Then, he sighed deeply. He reached across the table and held her hand. I'm just glad you told me the truth, he said quietly. Bella bit her lip, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. There's just one thing, she added in a shaky voice. Leonard lifted a brow. What is it? Bella hesitated, fear creeping back into her heart. My mother warned me years ago, she whispered. She said if I ever lay on another man's bed, I would be cursed. I could lose my life for yours. Leonard stared at her, his face unreadable. Bella wiped her tears and looked at him, her heart pounding. What if the curse is real? She whispered. Silence filled the room. Leonard's eyes darkened, his grip tightening around her hand. Bella swallowed hard. What if she had unknowingly doomed them both? Bella sat frozen, staring at Leonard, her heart pounding. What if the curse is real? She whispered again. Leonard let out a deep sigh and reached for her hands. He held them firmly, looking into her teary eyes. Bella, he said softly, your mother used the words laying down on another man's bed. But what she meant was sleeping with another man being unfaithful. Bella sniffled, unsure. But what if? Listen, Leonard interrupted gently. You didn't sleep with Michael. Nothing happened. And more importantly, our child is mine. Bella swallowed hard, his words slowly sinking in. Leonard continued, his voice filled with warmth. I know you were scared, and I understand why you kept it from me. But please, Bella, never hide such things from me again. If I had found out on my own, it would have broken me. Tears streamed down Bella's face. She had lived in unnecessary fear for months. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I was just so scared. Leonard wiped her tears with his thumb. It's okay. I've forgiven you. Bella let out a deep, shaky breath. A huge weight had lifted off her chest. Then, Leonard pulled her into a warm embrace. And for the first time in a long time, Bella felt truly safe. Months passed, and Bella's belly grew bigger. Leonard stood by her side every step of the way, making sure she was comfortable. He went with her to every hospital appointment, massaged her feet when she was tired, and reassured her whenever she got emotional. Then, one beautiful morning, the long-awaited day arrived. Bella was rushed to the hospital in labor. The pain was intense, but she held onto Leonard's hand, squeezing it tightly as the contractions hit. You're doing great, baby, Leonard whispered, kissing her forehead. After hours of labor, a loud cry filled the room. Their baby was here. Bella sobbed with joy as the nurse placed a beautiful, healthy baby boy in her arms. Leonard's eyes were wet as he touched his son's tiny fingers. He's perfect, he whispered. Bella gazed at her baby, her heart bursting with love. She looked up at Leonard with a soft smile. What name do you want to give him? Leonard chuckled. I already thought of a name. Nathaniel. It means gift of God because that's what he is to us. Bella smiled. Nathaniel, I love it. She kissed her baby's forehead and whispered, Welcome to the world, Nathaniel. A week later, they hosted a grand naming ceremony at their home. Family and friends gathered to celebrate the birth of their son. The house was filled with music, laughter, and delicious food. Bella watched everything with a grateful heart. Leonard stood beside her, his arm around her waist. Their baby nestled in her arms. At that moment, she realized something. She was truly happy. She had doubted Leonard in the past, but he had proven to be the best thing that ever happened to her. No matter what had happened, he had loved her, stood by her, and forgiven her. And now, they had a beautiful family. Bella leaned against Leonard's chest, smiling as baby Nathaniel slept peacefully in her arms. They had been through so much, but in the end, they lived happily ever after. Lessons learned. Fear and secrets can destroy relationships, but honesty and forgiveness can heal them. True love stands strong, even in the face of doubts and challenges. Sometimes we let fear rule our hearts, forgetting that God has already worked everything out for our good. A person who truly loves you will stand by your side, no matter what. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.